welcome back to the Is Anybody Out There podcast. Today we're going to talk a little bit about defense mechanisms and coping mechanism, coping skills, and all that good stuff. So, what you got going on? How you been?
All right, man. Just living the dream, as they say. No, I'm good.
Living the dream.
Yeah,
Living the dream.
I had an interview earlier with Wood Green, which is like a major social service agency in Toronto.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was for placement
Yo,
for
that's
September.
good.
Yeah, working with
That's
seniors.
so good. That's good.
Yeah. So that was
That's
my
good.
day, and other than that, applying to jobs because I
You,
gotta get
you
my.
excited for that, or?
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, I think I put my best foot forward, and ultimately, I think that's whatever happens, as long as I know that I did well. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
but it's promising. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. I had an interview the other day, and I think I did a great job, but
Nice.
it was quite awkward. I don't like doing interviews where I can't see you, so I'm on the phone and I'm talking, and I'm trying to put your best foot forward, but I can't gauge your reaction because there's the pauses, right? So I can't see how you're reacting to what I'm saying. So I don't know if I'm saying the right things and hitting the right notes. But something
Yeah.
really cool happened. Something really, really cool happened this week. So yesterday, I'm still trying to upload our last videos, taking forever.
Yeah.
And I was having so many struggles over the past couple of days. And somebody messaged me on the Facebook page. They messaged me.
Nice.
And initially I was like, yo, because I was getting a lot of spam. Like saying, oh no, your account's gonna be disabled, blah, 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 blah.
The usual.
So I was like, I wasn't sure. I didn't want to trust it. So I'm just feeling her like she's asking so many questions about what I'm doing and how the page looks and everything like that. So I'm giving information, but I don't want to give too much because I don't want to, reveal too much about it.
Yeah.
And then she's like, hold on a second, let me call you. I'm like, sure, why not? So I gave her my number. She called me, and she just started giving me so much information. She's like, you could do this, and you could do this, and you could call these people, you can do this, this is a good place for a job, and this is that, and you could do this, and this is a way to get into that career path. And I was like, wow. Because my day was so terrible, and she didn't have to do that. She didn't have to reach out to me, she didn't have to be nice to me. Like, and she did it out of just kindness. And that's something that a lot of people I feel is lacking in the world. It's just the random kindness of strangers. And so I was so taken aback. It really hit home. Like I was like, it really hit home. Anyways, we're coping mechanisms and defense mechanisms. Did you want me to write all off what's on the textbook? I could just go off and read some stuff that's in the textbook.
Yeah. Whichever the ones you think are the most applicable. Yeah, sure.
I could read them all pretty fast because there's only I think there's only like 8. Or it's like a standard garden variety repression. That's just you take your thoughts, you're keeping your thoughts, you push it down, you pretend it's not there type of deal. Projection is when you take kind of how you feel, project it onto somebody else. Like if you don't like somebody else, you in turn try to kind of feel like that person doesn't like you. So you kind of project your feelings. There's this flashlight. Ooh, is that you or me vibrating? I think I already did.
Oh, it's me. My headphones break. We're good though.
Yeah, so it's basically diverting your emotional feelings from their original source to somebody else. And say somebody screams at you, you go and you scream, you take it around a friend or a sibling or whatever. This one is something that I do a lot and I think is very damaging. It's reaction formation, where you behave in the exact opposite of the way you feel. So a lot of times when something's for me, the angrier or the worse a situation is, the calmer and calmer and calmer I get. It's useful because you don't flip out. You kind of want to deal with that stuff. You know what I mean? You need to address it, and I kind of flip it so that even when I'm in disputes that should be worked through to resolve it, I'll act the opposite. You screw me over, I'm going to act the complete opposite. And that can end you up in a lot of trouble. There's regression. Regression is like, you know, you acting the shirt. You know what I mean? You go back, you revert back to a previous state. You act mature. Rationalization is another thing I do, where you sit down and you kind of like this, you try to make sense of it and make rational sense of something that really, it doesn't really work that way, but you try to physically make it sense. Identification, this was kind of weird for me, but it's like bolster your self-esteem by forming an imaginary or real alliance with some person or group. I've never been able to fully understand this one,
Yeah, it's
but
a
it's
little
like the example they give is kind of like an insecure young man joins a fraternity at school, and I guess it's like the shy kid trying to join the cool clique. You know what I mean?
well,
Like
we were
that one
talking,
I've
yeah.
never. You know what? Go on.
I was gonna say we were talking kind of about that in our last episode about this kind of wanting to
Yeah,
belong thing. So that kind of ties into that.
I guess that's what it is. Like kind of trying to belong, right? And sublimation, and this is just one of my most interesting ones and the one I talk a lot. Although when I'm also dealing with some people in the group, I like to talk about this a lot. Now, this is usually subconscious normally,
Mm,
but I think that in some cases you could make a conscious decision to do these things. Basically, you take a poor quality, a maladaptive quality, a quality that isn't necessarily good um in society, and you sort of flip it and use it for something that is more socially acceptable. So it's like somebody
interesting.
who's aggressive joins like fight sports, right? You know what I mean? Like someone who's aggressive, they join fight sports. They have anger issues. They kind of join fight sports. Like in my case, like I have like it's a poor quality, and I don't like to go that far with it, and I don't want people to read into it the wrong way. But I have the kind of Machiavellian quality to try to convince you to believe. It's like they'll say manipulation. I don't want to go that far, but
As a
to try to
tendency for
convince
you, not
somebody,
a.
yeah, right, yeah, and to convince people to go with your way, your plan, your ideas. And so I kind of use that when I'm trying to help someone in terms of if I figure out that there's something positive, there's a positive avenue, I try to use that quality that I have to convince you that to circumvent the way you feel in order to think that this positive avenue is possible. So you might think, no, I can't do this. This is bad. This is nothing good's going to happen. And I use these skills to convince you to believe that there is something positive, right? That's that's how I use that, and I think sublimation can be used positively if people do it consciously, right? I think it
Right.
can be like people who've experienced a lot of hurt and a lot of pain and a lot of trauma. They have a tendency to beat themselves up, but at the same time, I don't think they fully realize that they have a lot more compassion than most people would have. And so
Wow.
if they took that pain and they sort of flipped it, that intense emotions, and they flipped it, they are because it says they'll feel like I'm not worthwhile, that
Right.
I'll never find somebody. But it's like they are actually, even though they might be emotionally damaged, they have an emotional quality that is perfect for a relationship. They just have to deal with the baggage and express that positive quality in order to establish a good relationship. Because a lot of people don't start off a relationship with that level of compassion, right?
Right.
But they from the get go they have that compassion ingrained in them from their experiences and not wanting anybody to hurt. So therefore, when they flip it, it's like they will have a very successful relationship so long as they deal with the damage part of it. That's my opinion. Anyways, that's my opinion. I tell a lot of people that, and it's I've seen it work. I've seen it work in a lot of relationships, and I believe it's neutral. I believe it's neutral. You have
Excellent.
some stuff written out.
Yeah, I mean, again, on the same kind of defense mechanism, more so the coping skills. I mean, I was just thinking about kind of the differences between being dry and being sober. So, for me, I'd say I'm sober now. Uh,
Mhm.
so now I'm going on. It's probably over 7 years now that I've been sober. but then there was a time where I was dry. So I guess I should kind of explain that.
Yeah, explain that.
In my opinion, dry was when I wasn't using substances, but I wasn't thriving either. And then so kind of sobriety is where I learned to kind of not only not use substances, but kind of live better. You know what I mean? And do well for myself. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, that's one of the things that came to mind when I'm thinking
So
about.
like, I'm guessing you're trying to say like being like dry is still kind of being, I guess, for lack of a better term, kind of still under the oppression of
Right.
the addiction, right? So you're still kind of under that umbrella. You haven't moved out from it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, basically. And so you're kind of, when you're dry, it's like you're still in the throes of the addiction, right? And I would obviously say that being dry is better than being an addict, but at the same
Of
time,
course,
you're not.
because it's a stat, right?
It's a step, but the next bigger step would be to actually gain sobriety and all of that. And I should also say that for me personally, for some, sobriety is, it's like they go to AA and they get the chips or whatever to remind them of their
Yeah,
sobriety and their goals and all of that. And discounting that or putting down people that find that to be extremely beneficial to them. But for me personally, count. You know what I mean? It was kind of like
yeah,
with the whole stopping using drugs thing. I kind of used a technique, and I don't know if other people will resonate with this, but my technique was putting off my drug use. So rather than saying, okay, now I'm not using drugs, I'm never touching this stuff again for the rest of my life, I kind of, in my mind, was thinking more along the lines of, okay, I made it an hour. I'm going to try to not use drugs for another hour, and then I'll get high, right? Then
I
I'll get
understand that.
destroyed, right? But then then I pushed it 2 hours. I'm like, okay, let's do one more hour, and then pretty soon that comes a day, and then another day, and another day, and then pretty soon there I was, kind of in a much better mind frame and state, physically and mentally. And then eventually, yeah, I've been sober for many years, and so it's not that I'm not cognizant of that time at all, and but my focus is not on that time. My focus is on, okay, what am I doing in the here and now, that's good for me. And I guess it's one of those fine balancing things, which I think we've talked a bit about last episode. This idea of
Yeah,
a balance, right? So at the same time, there's a lot of practices, whether with in terms of being in the here and now, and obviously that's a great. It's hard and it's a great thing, but you still have to be aware of the future. I mean, you know what I mean? So I'm not saying, so there's that balance between trying to, live in the present and also be aware of future goals and that sort of thing, because I've run into people, and I myself dealt with the same issue, is it, not focusing on the future. And I think, my goals and aspirations are something that are very important to me. Um, and so, keeping the end goal in mind, I'll reference again this whole gallbladder surgery I have coming up. It's hard to be in the here and now when I'm worried about, being put under and not being aware of things, and what if I die, that sort of thing, which is like not like, it's one in
they're
a thousand.
reasonable fears. They're
Yeah, but
reasonable fears, right?
but it's, yeah, for sure. But it's like a one in a thousand people die, or even less than that. But you know what I mean. But at the same time, I'm aware of the future goal too, which helps me get through that anxiety, which is, okay, so I'm gonna have the surgery. Things could be complicated, if they make a wrong turn, cut the wrong thing. As the surgeon did inform me that sometimes happens, they'll accidentally like nick your liver or something, and then they have to open you up, and it's a longer surgery. But the point is that to deal with the stress, I'm like, okay, well, then I'll go to the past too. Again, so it's like the balance between past, present, and future. I'll go to the past and I'll say, okay, well, in the past, the pain was so bad that I wanted to die. Truthfully, like, it was like the worst pain.
Yeah,
The gallbladder stuff is like, yeah, and yeah. So there were many nights where I was like, okay, if I die in my sleep, that's great because that way I'll be out of my pain. It was that bad. But then I got anxious, right? And then to kind of calm myself down, I think, okay, so obviously, like with any surgery, there's a risk, but what's the end goal? The end goal is me feeling much better physically, right? Which therefore, trickles off into
you
me
have
feeling
to.
better
Yeah,
mentally. But, at the same time, it's like, okay, so the pros outweigh the cons. The end goal is me living in a better state. And so, that's kind of, I don't know where I'm going with that, but that's kind of what made me
no,
think
no, I did.
about that. Yeah.
It's I think one of the hardest things, like you said, is the balancing act, right? Because it's like you got your goal is here, and let's see, you got your goal. I'm gonna do the one hand, six people. The goal is here, you're here, past is here, and it's like okay, in order to get to your goal, you kind of got to think about your goal. And when your goal seems hard, you kind of got to look at the past and see, okay, look at all the harder things you've overcome, right?
Yeah.
But in reality, you want to stay right here in the middle, in the here and now, and take steps every day in order to get to your goal. You want to take steps every day in order to get to your goal. So don't focus on just how hard and far away it is. You kind of got to focus on the day-to-day steps that are going to get you there. But then it's like
100%.
when you do get stressed, because the future is definitely going to come back and hit you, or you're going to get impatient. You kind of got to look at where you came from and look at how far you've come, even when you just started, right? And you kind of gotta give yourself a little grace in the sense where appreciate the journey. You know what I mean? Like
100%.
appreciate the journey. Like every single day you try, you work, you move closer to your goal, you have setbacks, you have successes. Appreciate the effort you're putting in and don't dismiss it, right? On your hard days, don't dismiss how hard it was for you to get here and appreciate it, respect yourself for it as you move closer towards your end goal. You know what I mean? Like that's how I look at it anyways. It's hard for me to put that into practice because like especially with this year, when I started this group and I was building it, my thought was I have to get as much done before I'm not here. So I gotta get as much done to leave it behind to somebody else to finish it. And so I've gotten past that point to where I want to actually see the end, but I still have that impatience and that fear of what if I'm not here? So I have to do it. And so it makes it hard to sleep. I'm constantly working on things, but I'm so like scatterbrained that it's hard for me to get things done anyways, which then, leads to more frustration, right? Because you're like, I need to get this. I need to get this. And you, I have to give myself I guess, some credit for even trying because I might fail. That's
Yes.
okay. I've got a
Yep.
couple people in the group. We're at about 35, and that's cool. And that's still a success in a sense. There's 35 people there who can get help when they need help, and so I
Right.
should look at that as a success. But in my head, I'm like, oh, this group can hold like 60,000 people, something like that, right? So I'm like, it's not enough, but it is.
Yeah.
If it was to end right now, I have 35 people there that could get help, and that's good. I don't know, you gotta celebrate the small victories. You gotta celebrate the
Yeah.
small victories.
For sure. For sure.
It's hard. It's hard, though. It's hard.
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
drive, when you said you drive, did you feel like there was a greater potential to backslide or
Yeah, I was more vulnerable for sure. You know, because in the dry stage, it is you're at this kind of precarious, standing at the edge of a cliff, right? And in my opinion, addiction will always be standing at the edge of a. It's just now I can look over and know that I'm not going to fall necessarily. You know what I mean?
okay?
but the cliff is there. I mean, if I for whatever reason had to be put on long-term painkillers, I'd like to think I wouldn't become addicted again. But obviously with my history that might be a possibility. And then there's also, not to discount, the many people who never had an addiction in their life, and then they get put on painkillers because they have chronic pain, and then all of a sudden they're addicts. So I think I can't be complacent. I can't be too lax, because that's when slip ups happen, you know what I mean? And so, it'll always be a part of me. Again, it's about looking at the past, right? How far I've come, and again, I'm a lucky case really, because I don't miss the high. I know many addicts, and if not all the addicts that I've met, miss certain aspects of things. But for me personally, too invested in the here and now and the future to
That makes sense.
I'm like that's the fact that I'm scared about having my surgery shows me that I'm in a good place. It's because this idea of not waking up, like, I know I'm gonna die one day, everybody dies, but the idea of
Everybody
dying
does.
now scares the hell out of me. And
It's not something you're interested
and I
in.
can honestly say that looking back on my past, in the throes of my addiction, I had no concern whatsoever over whether I was going to live or die. I felt, I was hurting in many ways, but a concern to me. Going to prison for whatever it was, that didn't scare me then, right? Because at the time I was just trying to get by. But now that I've seen how much I've built for myself and for people around me, that helps me not fall off that cliff. But again, I always have to remember that I am on a cliff. It's like I built a house, and the house is kind of just offset from the edge of the cliff. So I can get in my house, look out the window when it's raining, and see over the cliff. But the cliff will always be there, So I have to remind myself of that, because it's the same thing, when I used to steal and do dishonest things. It was complacency that made me feel like I was slick, you know what I mean? Like I could do it again, right? Like stealing, some people, they steal, they realize they can get away with it, they keep stealing, and then one day they get caught, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden, they regret it, right? So, but I think the other thing that's interesting to me about what you were saying, and if I can call it up in my head right now because I'm drawing a blank, but you were talking about, yeah, like, you know what, I lost my train of thought. But because you talked about a lot of things that were interesting.
I do talk about a lot of things.
But anyways, yeah, so yes, this idea that the cliff is there, whether I like it or not. It's a part of my landscape, let's put it that way. So but I also know, here I remembered it. You were talking about making mistakes, right? And the fear of failing and that sort of thing. And I'm thinking,
yes.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, to me, the way I look at things is I'm going to fail. It's not, I don't even, I know that I'm going to fail, so I still actually, that's a lie. I was going to say I'm not afraid of failing, but that's a big lie. I'm very afraid of failing.
Yeah.
But the thing that
everybody's a willing,
but at the same time, I take comfort in knowing that I'm going to fail, because it's going to happen in my life. Again, but there's that saying, the more failures you have, the more you're close to a success. I mean, there wouldn't be
you can't succeed without trying.
Yeah,
right? And can't succeed without trying.
Success isn't,
and nobody has a perfect record.
Right. And success and failure, there wouldn't be one without the other.
No.
Unless it's like unless you're really lucky, which sometimes happens. But again, it's important, I think, as humans, to not count on luck. And I'll describe that kind of like with the whole, leaving the grocery store job. I think for partway through, like maybe 8 months in, I was thinking, okay, my luck, I'm going to run into somebody and they're going to tell me what I should do with my life. I'm going to, run into somebody who's going to give me a job. It's all about networking, and then I'll be fine. But then that wasn't really a realistic way of thinking, because the reality is, and I've learned this from my own past, that I had to make my success. Now, I was a very lucky guy in terms of, like, in many ways, I feel like kind of like a cat with 9 lives. Like, I should have died many times over. I did, and whatever. Um, and yet I made it through. But, again, it's like I can't count on luck, right?
Yeah.
And luck doesn't happen always at the right time, or at the time that you think it should happen, right?
Luck is
So
kind
yeah.
of like preparation and opportunity. When you are prepared enough, and then when you go out there and try to get whatever it is you're after,
Yeah.
when the opportunity comes, it's a mixture between how prepared you are and when the opportunity arises, right? And you kind of have to try to make that yourself. So you still got
Hmm.
to apply, you still got to network. And where the luck kind of comes in is, there has to be somebody who misses it, and I'm sure they'll find other opportunities. Or where the luck comes in is where you happen to get the opportunity in kind of in place of somebody else, where it was like you met that person first,
Yeah.
you apply first, they seen your resume first, and the preparation is the stuff that's on the resume because you've done the hard work, you've done things, you've gotten the experience. So when
Hmm.
they do see your stuff first, it is lucky, but it's because you were prepared and you did the work and you just got the opportunity. That's kind of
That's
how
right.
I
That's
view
right.
luck.
No, I agree. That's it. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I could
So
use a
yeah, I
little
mean,
luck.
yeah. Yeah. Couldn't a bunch of us. um but yeah, so let's talk a bit more about game skills. Let's talk about that.
Oh,
Let's talk about, on the same
you got
vein
any
as
good ones? Because
coping.
I suck.
Yeah, so uh, for me it's writing, right? It's so when I was, a teenager, that kind of was, well, I'll start off with as a kid, right? As a kid, it was really my coping mechanism, because and some of the people watching this may have had a different memory if they grew up with me, but I have, uh, to be perfectly honest, very few good memories of my childhood.
Okay, say right.
And some of it was good. I'm sure of it. But there were enough things that I was being tormented by, whether it was bullies or just self-esteem issues, that I've just blanked it out. So I find it's funny sometimes when I meet up with people I grew up with, and they kind of reminisce on these old times, and I have actually no memory. So anyways, so in my childhood, I really got
I don't.
into
You know what's really weird?
what's that?
My family seems not to remember any of the good times that I remember because they're very
Mm,
sparse and they're very weird. So when I tell them
yeah,
about a good memory, they're like, "What?" They don't remember those, but those are the only ones small few I can remember.
right. Yeah. And so anyways, I as a kid, I often felt like the only thing I had in my corner was writing, right? People can take your sense of self if you let it happen, which is easier when you're a child, and you need
Much
people
easier.
to kind of make you feel like you're worth it. But anyways, so I went to writing, and it was literally like Dear Diary type stuff, right? And then as I became a teenager and got into drugs and all that, the one of the things that kind of kept me going was writing rap, right? I was really into that and spoken word, to the point where, among certain people, they thought, oh, you should get signed, da, 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 oh, you're going to be big. Anyways, it didn't happen. Maybe because I didn't try enough, or for different reasons, and that is what it is. And I'm actually happy to not be a famous rapper, but 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 I kept writing, right? So throughout my life, writing has been my escape, and I turned to that especially when I got sober, because again, all of a sudden I didn't have my drugs as my escape. So, you know, and so yeah, so writing has always been an important coping mechanism and skill for me. and then applying it even to school, right? Some people type their notes, right? And that's their way of getting through school and the textbooks and all of that. And for me, that's not how it is. I've been a writer my whole life, so I prefer to write everything out. And then if there's time, I'll type it out. So in terms of, yeah, that's my main coping skill mechanism type thing. And it's gotten me very far. And I don't write songs to the point that I used to, but sometimes I just have a notebook. Actually, I do have a notebook that's just full of just rhymes, and it's not even a song. It's just like words that rhyme or kind of rhyme, and then eventually I'll put them into a song format. But again, that's just for playing around, really.
Just playing around, right?
But that's my main one. And the other one is going outside. Now, it doesn't have to be, your typical long walks on the beach type deal, right? But it's important for me to get outside, because some days I spend thinking I'm inside and I notice I get so even if it's like a freezing cold winter day and I don't want to go outside, or it's super hot, going outside is incredibly important to me. For several reasons. The main one being that, I spent so much time locked up on the psych ward, getting used to basically living in a cell where, I had a window. I'll never forget this, a window. I won't say the hospital, but the window where it overlooked a smokestack to the hospital. That was my view. So, and I remember in my head how kind of disconnected and alone I felt. And my lovely parents would come and visit me when they could, at least once a week. But then they were gone. I didn't expect their lives to not to go on. They had to, take care of themselves too, right? Because if they couldn't take care of themselves, then they couldn't take care of me. So it's not like I begrudge them for doing that, but they had to leave me something, right? And so I spent so much time away from society and disconnected that, now it's even years later, it's not so much that I'm traumatized still, although I still have that trauma in my life, but I need that connection. So even if I'm not
Does
talking
it
to
kind of
somebody,
like make it claustrophobic a little bit? Not
yeah,
claustrophobic, but I guess that's the closest I can think of. It's like claustrophobic.
it makes me feel stuck if I'm inside too
Yeah,
much.
there we go. That's something like you can't do. You can't
It's
just suck.
funny because you said claustrophobic, and I'm not claustrophobic. And so in many ways, being locked up in a psych ward, like that was a tiny room, and sometimes I had to share it with someone else. To the average person, or some people, many people, that would be like they'd feel claustrophobic. But I don't. I never felt that. Like living in a tiny room, as long as I have, what I need to survive, like food and maybe a window if possible. I'm okay with the small spaces, but the lack of connection. So again, going outside, even if I'm not, you know, buying something at a store or talking to somebody on the street, seeing other people walking around, living their lives and talking makes me feel
Makes you feel
connected,
connected
makes
to
me
the
feel
world, right?
grounded. Yeah, exactly. So, so that's another way that I cope. And then I think the last one that's really important to mention is talking. So I like to talk to people about um, their experiences, good and bad, and it's one of those things that, the more you talk with people, the more you learn about the world, because you learn about the world through their perspective. Or even if you don't have the same perspective, you at least are aware that they have a different perspective. So, you know, that's super important for me as well. And
But every once in a while, I like to like I don't like crowds. I don't like
need.
mall, but it's weird. I like downtown
Mhm.
by, the eating center, and it's packed with people, you know what I mean? It is jam packed, but it just makes me feel connected.
Yeah.
Like I'm just a part of this big wave that, exists. I'm not excluded from it, right? Sometimes it's like like I said, going out gives me like anxiety.
Me too.
Sometimes I like to go and sit in a bar and not talk to anybody. I just want to be a part of that setting so I don't feel as lonely. Like I don't even need to talk. I just want to be there. Like I just want, I just want to be there amongst those people and just. I don't even know what the experience gives me, but it makes me feel,
Something, yeah.
uh, yeah, right. It makes me feel something.
Alive
And
is
so I
something
will
that
do
comes to my
sometimes.
mind.
Yeah, I feel alive.
Yeah.
I feel alive. I feel connected. I feel a part of it. And
Yeah.
it's the,
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll kind of add to how you know, because I feel the same way as you regarding that. And the other thing that I like to think about is the little things, right? So, you know, when I was in the hospital, I always, you know, rightly or wrongly compare things to how I was, you know,
well, no, it's
a
a
lot
big
of,
experience in your life, right? It's a
yeah.
huge experience.
Yeah. So, you know, I've come a long way from being stuck in the past to being able to reflect on the past and not feel stuck. But what I was gonna say is, you know, it's the little things. So, you know, when I was locked away, it was hard to appreciate little things like, you know, the colors that are vibrant after it rains, that type of thing. I mean, it might sound cheesy, but literally, um,
No, no,
I
no,
couldn't
no, no.
enjoy those little things. And those were things that prior to I didn't notice because I was always high or trying to get high. Um, but after gaining
And
my
the next thing is kind of look a
sobriety,
little
yeah,
dull right after, right?
yeah. So you know, I've started to, you
Because
know, or a nice,
it's not heightened.
yeah, and a nice sunset. Like that counts for a lot for me. So yeah.
No, I agree with that. I had similar experience with writing as I grew up.
Hmm.
It's funny how it started because I would draw as a kid, and then I have my best friend at the time who was a lot better than me, so I was like, ah, scrap this. And so a teacher had some of my work. They're like, this is not good. You need to do this. Blah 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 blah. Blah. And so I was like, oh really? Oh, really? And I don't know why it lit something in, me, but it
Yeah.
did. And so I came in with a crazy assignment, and it's just a little speech kind of thing. And it was like, so then she was like, everybody, she's like, this is how you should write that assignment. This is how you
Right.
should do it. So then from then on, it was like a switch. And so I would write and I would write and I'd write stories. Then it's like, there's an obsessive thing that I have, but it's technically a good thing. I have, a story running in my head at all times, right? Like all the time, a hot story. So I'll be taking a shower and I'll be building this story, and it's
Yeah.
just world building, and I'm going through with this story, and I'm creating things, and then I'll write, and I'll write, and I'll write, and I loved it. I I thought that that was going to be where I end up,
Right.
right? Because of how much my passion was for it and how good I was at a particular time in my life.
Mhm.
Like towards the end of my teens, I was crazy. When I was 23, I was amazing. But then, and this is not to discourage anybody. So I just want to put a disclaimer, not to discourage anybody. These things affect people differently, and this is how it affected me. My medication damaged it, so I can't be as creative anymore. Because before I could pull words out of thin air, I could pull words from anywhere, and I could create any sentence structure you think of. That was my gift. But because it dulls it, I can't quite organize my thoughts the same way. And
Mhm.
so I love to do it, but it is such a painful struggle. And sometimes I avoid it because there's so much love and passion for it. But at the same time, the sadness, right?
Yeah.
The sadness of what it could have been,
Yeah.
the sadness of knowing how good I could be. And it's like, so sometimes when I end up missing my medication, I'll start to have sparks fly again. And it's
Yeah.
so tempting. It's
Yeah.
so tempting to be like, forget it. But I know
Yeah.
what's on the other side of stopping, right? I know what's on the other side, and I
Yeah.
can't go there. But it's like when you get that little spark, you're like,
Yeah.
maybe if I go a couple of days, maybe
Yeah.
just a couple of days, I can write so much in a couple of days. And then I'm bipolar, right? So
Yeah.
then if I wait too long, the mania starts to kick in, and
Right.
then I'm like, no, I can do it in like I can write a whole book in like 3 days, and then I can just go back on my medication. You have the delusion, right?
Yeah.
And so I have to pull myself back, and also like try to like because I write music now too, right?
Hmm.
And like to be a star. anything.
Yeah.
I'm writing for like specific purposes and also just to have fun. And I have to kind of understand that it's going to take work for me to get the right words the way I want them. But I'm gonna have to work on it. And so it's a trial, but I have fun doing it. When I let myself go, I have fun doing it. And that's something that helps me cope because even when I can't do it, I'm not so much. Sometimes I can write about what I'm feeling. And if I'm not writing about what I'm feeling, sometimes just the act of trying to build this thing, like, not necessarily distracts me, but it focuses me. So even when I'm frustrated, I'm like, where's the right word? And I'm trying to pull it, and I'm trying to find it, and that helps me. And listening to music used to really, really
That's a
help.
big one, yeah.
It used to really, really help. So like just stories and music really seem to be things that I resonate with in terms of coping. They really help me cope. And that's me personally.
Mm,
I'm not sure about other people.
yeah,
And I'm sure they have their ways.
yeah.
It's all about it. As dumb as it sounds, there's a lot of it about it. To cope is to not avoid. You know what I mean?
Right.
You can't avoid the problem. You can't use something to dull the problem. You know, everybody has their vice, and I'm not putting anything on anybody. Everybody has their vice, and I'd be a hypocrite to chastise you for it. But like you said, going out, being in the world, talking about it is a way to cope. Spending time with family, even when you don't, family or friends or some people who care about you, people who are in your
Mm-hmm.
corner, spending time with those people can be really beneficial. And sometimes you won't want to. You know, you won't want to, you won't want to leave your house, you won't want to see them, but getting out and being in the presence of somebody who cares about you, it it helps in the healing process because when you sit at home in the quiet by yourself and you're not talking to anybody, you start to mentally isolate yourself and then you start to think, okay, nobody cares. And that's not a road you want to go down. Because even just the first thought of nobody cares, I'm alone, it trickles and it gets heavier. It gets heavier because it piles up. It piles up. And more thoughts of nobody cares. And it just pushes you down because it gets on top of you and it pushes you down. And so sometimes even just, I don't know, getting coffee with a friend can take a layer of that nobody cares.
Yeah.
And you just want to chip away at those layers. That's kind of what you want to do. You don't want you can dig yourself out of whatever situation or feeling you have, but you can get support. If there's somebody in your life, you can get support. Shameless plug. The group's here if you want some support. Join the Discord. We'll support you. But they actually, in reality, will support you. That's a that actually is
Yeah.
shameless plug, but a fact.
Nice.
I I miss writing so much.
It's
I miss it
quite,
so much.
it's interesting that you say that. You mentioned a lot of great things, but when you were talking about your writing, kind of the medication affecting it, that resonated with me a lot. Because so from my own experience, you know, truthfully, my best lyrics that I've written and that people really enjoyed were written when I was kind of at my worst mentally, right? Hearing voices and having hallucinations and all of that. But so, and it's people commonly say it that there's a thin line between madness and creativity. And I
Yeah,
really do believe that to be true because yeah, in your case and mine as well. Yeah, I could do so much and then then I got put on psych meds and it dulls you, man. It's like
it does.
you know what it is for me, and it's less so now. Having been on the medication I'm on for what over 8 years, it's like your brain is trying to run in water. It's like
Yeah,
you're
that's
running,
such
but
a good
you're
analogy.
not really moving fast to where you want to go. So I still struggle with like sedation and that sort of thing and feeling like at a loss for certain like I can be articulate when I talk, but when it comes to explaining to somebody how to do something or
Yeah.
instructions. I just have the hardest time doing it. And I know, people get, sometimes frustrated with me, when I have a hard time explaining things as clearly as maybe they'd like. And anyways, suffice to say, yeah, it's hard. And but I will say that it has gotten easier to do that. As the years have gone on, and I've gotten more used to the medication. But at the same time, yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if I would say I feel dull or numb. I have, however, I would say that I don't have a lot of anger as much. Like I feel a lot less
Mm.
angry and more what's the word? Even keel. Like I'm yeah. I'd say it's done well for me, the medication that I'm on. Not just because it's prevented me from being mentally ill, but also because it just keeps me kind of on an even level of
Even feel.
emotion. Yeah, but now,
I for me is it's like it kind of puts a barrier between the creative part I want to get to
yeah,
and where I'm at. It's like I'm so close. I'm so close. I just can't get there. I
yeah,
just can't get there.
it's
And
yeah,
it's like all the words I need are just past this barrier
just out of
and
reach.
just out of reach.
Yeah,
And so it's like on my medication, I'm on so many. I'm on
yeah,
uh lots. I'm on a lot of medication. But a lot of it is to regulate my kind of like my emotions.
right.
They're to regulate because I'm bipolar, so it's to regulate the emotion.
Yeah,
And in order to create, you kind of have to be able to tap into these
yeah,
emotions. And so part of I think my problem is that one, I'm not the most emotional person,
mm,
but two, when I go to write, I don't start off trying to get into the right emotional state to do it. I kind of try to do it as I go. And so I never get that because I started just writing some stuff down. I didn't come from a place of emotional expression.
yeah.
And
Interesting.
so it's like you're not going to create something if you don't come from that space. Because I'll know sometimes when I'll be trying to write all night and then I'm just about to go to bed and
Mm,
I'm tired, and then I'm hazy because I'm tired, and then stuff just starts to come out, right? And
yeah, yeah,
and then I'm going crazy. I'm going crazy. But it was like, it took me hours to get there, and I have to sleep. So I can't stay awake for another like
yeah,
3 hours writing. It's 5 in the morning,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's
So it's
interesting.
wow, yeah. Toilet seats hurt, man. Like man, I'm so numb. You got any more boring stuff to talk about?
Oh, I would just say in response, I feel a similar way in terms of the barrier. I kind of look at it slightly different. Not obviously you're not wrong for seeing it how you see it,
Yeah.
but for me, the way I treat it is kind of so I have a learning disability as well,
Mhm.
nonverbal learning disability. So, anyways, without going into that too much, I changed for me. Like I don't see like put it this way: when I first started at George Brown many years ago, because this is my third program, I was actually in a program many years before child and youth care, where it was like a upgrading program to upgrade your
Well, yeah, I know those.
grades. Yeah, so I did that because my high school marks were not stellar. But anyways, I knew I had this diagnosis, and it got me extra money from the school. And then eventually, I thought in my head, I was like, I don't really feel like I'm disabled. I have a learning difference, is what I like to call it. So for
Mhm.
me, um, I like to treat this writing barrier, which I do have, as more of it's a
Challenge?
wall, but it's not as high a wall as I used to think, or as I think. It's more like I just have to get a ladder to get up over the wall. So it's like a major inconvenience. and an annoyance, but it's not like I can't get over it. It just takes me more time. So
like the way it is for me is I guess where it's frustrating, and I'm going to use an example that doesn't necessarily make sense for me, but it is something that I guess other people could understand. So it's like I went from being this lady, my writing hero, and Rice, once, and I had trouble reading the book. Swear, wrote 4 pages about one room, just describing the room in vivid detail. And I was reading it, and I felt like I was there. And a lot of people like to put down this author, but I like Angels and Demons so much, but they put him down. It's like coming from being this great, intricate, beautiful writer like Anne Rice to becoming Dan Brown, right? And so when you look up at all these intricate, beautiful things you could have put together, and then you come down to what many people consider to be a very basic, not very good writer. Again, not my opinion. I like the book. It's like you look up and you're like, that was paradise. And now I'm here. How do I get back up there? And that's what's hard for me. But I think one of my deficits is that being on the medication, I've learned to deal with most things in my life.
Yeah.
So I can work and do everything. I've learned how to deal with it because I just have to reform things.
Yeah.
Right? I have to kind of come up with shortcuts in my head to be able to navigate things, to get through things, and be able to understand. But I have not been able to apply it to anything that I like, that brings me joy. And so it's just going to take a lot of reforming.
Yeah.
Because even like the story that I'm working on now, I will get to a point where I'm writing and I kind of I write to surprise myself.
Yeah.
Everybody else plans out their entire. I have just a general idea. And so when I write the story that's in my head. So like in terms of like it might not be as good, but I'll write the story that's in my head as if I'm the character, right? So I'm writing from their perspective.
Yeah.
So I'll look and it's like, okay, just put down everything that person would see and put down how you'd feel dealing with this particular situation if you had those attributes, right? So it's like this one character, he goes through so many bad things over and over and over and over again, and then he's confronted with something that's just super bizarre and super bad.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like, I still gotta kind of fight for my life, but really? He gets to the point where he's like, really? He's like, how are these bad things still happening?
Yeah.
But initially he was in disbelief. Now he's like, okay, come on, this is still just a bit less. This is all happened in one day. And it's like I kind of try to put myself in the character because at least if I'm in the role of the character, what I'm writing down is what they're seeing. And every part of the story that comes is almost like I'm there, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of my workaround in terms of that. In terms of like poetry and music writing, that's difficult. I'm having difficulty getting that back. I can't write as abstract as I used to.
Yeah.
You know, I can't write abstract, which was my bag, right? Like that was my thing. But you know what's really funny?
What's that?
If somebody said, I need you to write this, I probably can do it.
Yeah.
But if I sit down and I'm like, let me write this, I can't do it. I write better for other people than me.
Yeah. For me, it's similar, and I would say that it's almost like I need a prompt. Yeah.
I need the prompt.
Yeah.
I need the prompt. We are at 59 minutes and 32 seconds. Want to call it a wrap?
Let's call it a wrap.
All right. I'm going to try to upload again to Facebook. And,
YouTube,
I will see you later in the week sometime.
All right.
Let's do this.
Good talking to you,
All right,
Ty. See you, everyone. Bye.
See ya.